Oh my god, I'm bankrupt. There's no more loans for me to take from the estates. Why? It's because you suck. It's because your control is really bad. Your control determines the amount of money you actually make. Potential base tax gets multiplied by the actual control, which results in the base tax, which afterwards gets distributed to the estate that you tax and make your own money off of, with the excess being kept by the estates to build buildings or to lend out to you in case you need loans. Not to worry though, I got you covered. In this video, you're going to learn not only how control and proximity works and how you can maximize both of those in your campaign, but I also have a very important secret to tell you. I also have a bit of a personal request. I'm trying to reach 250,000 subs by the end of December, which is very fast approaching. So if you do enjoy the content, really consider subscribing. I would absolutely appreciate it. Thank you very much. So the first thing you want to do is you want to bring up your economy tab and make sure you pin both the control proximity maps, and then go to your population map modes and pin the population satisfaction map. These three maps are vital to have at the bottom of your screen, which also you can pin. So no matter whether you're hovering or not over the bottom, you always see your favorite maps. Why are these important? Well, let's go first off to the control map mode. On average, you will have 100 control in your capital at all times unless there's some event that lower that temporarily, and then the areas around your capital will likely also have very high control. The lower the proximity to the capital, the more maximum control we get from that one particular modifier itself, but that's not the only way we can get control. So let's go through every single means of getting control, and then we'll leave proximity to capital, which is the best way to increase your control, as that is a topic onto itself. Easiest way early on in the campaign, of course, is to integrate your provinces. There's 3 levels of integration. The conquered level, once you conquered a new province, which is going to lower the maximum control by 10%, you can assign a cabinet member with high military ability to integrate that location. It will take some time, but after it's been integrated, you will get the integration rank, which increases maximum control by 5%. From that, we want to upgrade it to a core rank, which increases the maximum control by 20%. How do we do that? Very easy. An integrated location will become core if at least 50% of the population in that location is either your primary culture or an accepted culture. So in this case, we would have to go to our society tab, and we would have to accept the last population to turn Rizayon into a core province. We cannot do that, however. We can only tolerate them because in order to accept a culture, they need to be at least 2.5% of the entire population of your country. It costs 5 prestige to tolerate, another 5 to accept without different modifiers, and as well as it costs different cultural capacity when it's tolerated and accepted. The next easy way to get maximum control increase is by going to our locations rank. Again, there's 3 different levels of locations. Most of them are going to be a rural location, which don't give any actual increase to your maximum control. However, if we click on a province, we can upgrade that province to a town by spending a little bit of money. Once it is a town, a location will give you plus 5% max control increase. And from a town, again, if we spend a little bit more money, we can upgrade it to a city like Constantinople and Chalcedon, which if we hover over gives us an extra 10% maximum control alongside a lot of other modifiers. The way you want to do it basically in pretty much all games, wherever you've got your capital, remember that you're going to have high proximity to all your adjacent locations. Regardless if you're a nation that is a naval or a land nation, you will have that proximity very high to adjacent locations. So you want to basically make every single one of your core locations into cities eventually. That's the end goal. Now, whenever you do upgrade a location to a town or city, the first thing you want to do is build a temple in there, because a temple also increases the maximum control by another 5%. So if we hover over Chalcedonia, core 20%, city rank 10%, temple 5%, alone means we get a base of 35 maximum control without any proximity if we take out the proximity to capital. But we see there's an average satisfaction minus 1.92. What is that about? That's very important. We're going to go to the satisfaction map mode. Basically, the way this works is if you've got 100% satisfaction, there is no debuff. debuffs. However, if you've got 0% satisfaction like we've got over here, it lowers our maximum control by up to -10. So you want to make sure your population is as happy as possible. The more satisfied, the less debuffs to max control, and vice versa. You actually can hover over these locations, and then you can hover over individual populations to see why exactly they're pissed off. A lot of the times it's going to say from events, which quite literally means just from events. Something happened, you probably went for a decision that made that particular pop in that particular location upset. There's a lot of different modifiers that increase their satisfaction, and one easy thing you could do to keep them happy is in your market, make sure that you've got your population needs met as much as possible. In our case here, we just have a few shortages. It's not too much, so it doesn't reduce our satisfaction by that much. If we had massive shortages, then yes, there would be a lot more unhappy. One more thing you can do to increase your maximum control is having soldiers stationed in a location and province. If we go over to Kotiania here, because we've got our army stationed in there, it increases our maximum control by 22% from the army being in that location, as well as from 3.47 from it being in that province. So all the other locations in the Kotayon province will also get the maximum control increase. Even the one further away over here will get the extra 3.47% friendly army and province modifier. So early on, this is not as easy to do because you pretty much only can do it with levies, so you cannot disband your levies after the war is over to take advantage of this if you want to. Later on, once you have professional armies, however, you can literally have like 5,000 soldiers in each province if you can afford it, which will increase your maximum control for that particular province, as well as it will double down in that particular location where it's stationed. You also can increase your maximum control temporarily by assigning a cabinet member that has high admin ability. So we could say increase control in this province in Ankara for us. That will by default increase it by 14%, and then that's going to be doubled down on based on the cabinet efficiency. So right now it's capped at maximum plus 21% max control, as well as monthly control 2.17. This is not permanent, so if we hover over it, we see that despite the current maximum control being 94, once we remove the cabinet member, it is going to go away. So pretty much these are the only non-proximity ways of increasing control. But you probably noticed we've got a lot more control right now in our core areas. If we check, they're also all predominantly cities, which has of course doubled down on that control, which is also why you really want to spread your cities around as much as your economy can hold you to do so. However, the next topic here is proximity, and proximity is how you absolutely super snowball with control. Look at our control right now. It is so high if we hover over, predominantly because of proximity, not because of the other modifiers. I'm gonna try and make myself as tiny as possible so you can see this. Plus 70 from proximity to capital, whilst the 35 from the other things we mentioned earlier. And heck, even in Sardinia, which is very far from Constantinople, we're getting 41 control, again because of the 16% increase for proximity to capital. So what is proximity and how do we get more of it? Well, proximity, if we go to the proximity map mode again, is a value that determines how easy the capital can control the locations around the nation. If we hover over our closest locations to the capital, Silimivira, we see that right now we've got 100 proximity source to Constantinople, and that is reduced by 4.64. Why is that? Well, every province from the capital has 40 proximity cost if it's through land, which is the case right here, and that gets further modified by a lot of different things, including having roads built. Road lowers the proximity cost by 30 in the case of a modern road, or 20 in the case of a gravel road. The very first road that you build, that gets upgraded to a paved road, and then to a modern and eventually a railroad, which lowers the proximity cost by 35. Roads are the easiest way to lower your proximity cost through land. That means that the proximity we're working with after we've built our road, in our case, is 10 because it was lowered by the road. Then what comes into play after that is the type of land. Because it's farmland, it only increases the cost by 5%. So that's 5% increase of 10, which is 0.5. Then it gets further reduced by a variety of things, such as the itinerant court law the amount of development this particular location has, the Pound Lock Canal, which is a unique building you can get in the second age, and you should be building your Pound Lock Canals everywhere because it lowers proximity cost by 5%. Your centralization value, because we're at 90 centralization, it lowers our proximity cost by another 9%. If you manage to get it to 100%, it will lower proximity cost by 10%. We see that we also have the local infrastructure H2 advanced. That is the admin focus H2 advanced. That is really overpowered, that you should always go for the lowest proximity cost, minus 2.5 permanently. The Supreme Court, which is a building that gives minus 5% proximity cost for the entire country if you build this in your capital. It is an age 4 building. The Confederal Union is an administrative law that you unlock again a little bit later down the line that again doubles down and lowers your proximity cost at the cost of increasing your decentralization a bit, and your ruler's admin ability. If we go over to our ruler, he is a 45 admin ability. If you had 100% admin ability, we would lower the proximity cost by 10%, which is a huge deal. What else can lower that proximity cost? If our capital is upstream, it will make sure that every location that is downstream from the capital will get minus 30 flat proximity cost, guys. You see that this particular river here, it flows this direction, so all of the locations that are in that particular direction, which are downstream from the capital in Paris, will get by default a 30 reduction in proximity, even without a road. But of course, we also double down on that, and we have the road built as well everywhere pretty much in northern France, at least in our game. If you're not sure how to access your river map mode, do make sure you go to your settings, input binding, go all the way at the bottom. You have to manually assign a key to bring up the river map mode. You cannot find the river map mode in any of these tabs here. In my case, I set it to Control R because I find it easy, but you can bind it to whatever you want to do. It's really important to check the river map mode as much as you can because it gives you an idea exactly of what rivers are going through where. So if you want to change your capital to another location, you need to know where your rivers are, so you can place your capital somewhere that it's upstream from a river. That way you get the minus 30 flat downstream proximity cost reduction for all of the other areas, which is a lot of them. And then another important thing is the topography map. So you want to click on the topography because different types of terrain will also impact your proximity massively. So if we go to the proximity map mode again, and we see the proximity coming from the province of Langres, which is hills, to Dijon, we get an extra 25% increase in proximity cost because from Langres to Dijon, it is hills. Every single province through which your proximity goes to reduces by a certain amount the proximity source. So obviously, because the closer you are to Paris, you only have one location through which the proximity source travels through, which is going to be impacted only by the modifiers between Paris and that one location, which you can see right here. But let's say we go to Orléans. Orléans has to go through how many? It goes from Paris to Corbeil, then from Corbeil to Étampes, and from Étampes to Orléans. So that's 3 location it has to go through, which means from 100 proximity source in Paris, it ends up being 65.59 proximity of Orléans to the nearest source. Keep that in mind for later because there's multiple sources. It's not just the capital. Capital is your main source, but we have a few other sources we're going to discuss in a few moments. So the further you are locations wise, the less proximity to source you're going to get. And as I mentioned earlier, the rivers and the roads are the easiest, best way to lower the flat amount of proximity. And then we double down on that with percentage modifiers by building all the other buildings, including, by the way, early on, you want to build your bridges. You can only build your bridge on locations that are on rivers as well as that have roads built on them before you build the bridge. And the bridge again lowers the proximity cost by 5%. The Pound Lock Canal does the same thing as a bridge does, but it can only be built in a city or a town, and it can actually stack with the bridge. So you can have both this and the bridge in the same location. You also might be wondering sometimes, how come there's so little proximity to this particular location despite the fact that I built roads everywhere? I mean, look at this. There's literally roads everywhere here, except there isn't. That's the trick. Go back to the proximity map mode, hover over that location, and we're currently looking at this particular connection. Le Mans to Villaines-la-Juhel. Why is this minus 27? That is very suspicious. So if we hover over it, we see that the proximity cost through land is not further reduced reduced by gravel road. All the other areas do have gravel road, except this one here does not. Why is that? Well, it's because just because on the map it shows that you have gravel road doesn't mean you have gravel road going in every single direction. Look at that. If you hover over the location itself, it says from this particular location to that particular location, there is no gravel road. From this one to this one, there isn't. There are 4 gravel roads, but 3 of them are missing in different directions from that location, because you need to have roads going in every single direction from each location. If you have 9 different directions, you need to have 9 roads originating from there if you want to have a successful connection through there. So if we click on Le Mans and we click on roads, but look, Ludi, there is nothing you can build. Oh, is that so, buddy? Let's click on this. Oh, what do you know? It did make a road, even though it showed us there's nothing to click. What about here? Oh, there's another road going there. What about, oh, there's another road going there. So we built an extra 3 roads right now, or at least we queued up 3 more roads that are going to be finished in 370 days. That is one of the biggest noob traps. Be very careful with this. This can really ruin your proximity from capital very easily. So don't fall for that. Make sure you manually check what's happening, what is the issue. Alternatively, you can go to your capital, click on roads, and it should give you all the various connections. See, it's asking me to build roads in areas which, if you go to the roadmap mode, already shows as if it has roads, but clearly it doesn't. So we can go from here and we can upgrade all of these roads that clearly are connections that would make us get more proximity down from those roads onward. So these roads being built is a big bonus for us. It helps us a lot. Another important thing to note is that, remember we talked about the proximity cost from being downstream from a river. Well, if you've got proximity cost being downstream from a river, which gives -30, it negates the road. So building a road from here to Paris is pointless. Won't really do anything for us because it simply chooses which one's better. Is there a downstream bonus or is there a road bonus? So if we have a railway between these two, the one that's going to be chosen is going to be the railway, which reduces by 35 the proximity cost rather than 30, which is what the downstream gives us as a bonus. Or modern road also gives 30. So I don't know how that's going to be. It's going to be one or the other, I guess. And also upstream from a river also gives a reduction of -10. So if we go back to the proximity and we go to upstream provinces from Paris to Montmessi, we've got -10 proximity cost from being upstream, but it's not showing because we got -20 from gravel road, so it prioritizes the gravel road. So how can I show you that that's true? Well, let's go to the south. The south, we've got a bailiff for something we're going to talk about in a couple of seconds, and if you hover over from Milo to Florac, you see that you get -10 from proximity cost of being upstream from a river. If we were to build a road between Milo and Florac, we would not get this bonus anymore. It would be replaced by the gravel road that gives -20. And I did build a couple of bailiffs in the south. Why did I do that? Well, as you would imagine, proximity cost from a capital emanates from your capital. If your capital is very far away, it will have areas that don't get any proximity. So the entirety of the south part of France has 0 proximity right now. The only way we can get proximity here is by getting better technology, which would increase our proximity bonuses, or we could change our capital somewhere more center. So if we change it around this area, we would have both the south and the north covered by proximity. But the problem is topography, boys. The southeast is a lot of hills and mountains. So if we were to move our capital here, sure, we might get a lot of proximity to the northern bits because it is flatlands. How much we get to the southeast is debatable though. A bailiff is a proximity source. Remember what I talked about earlier? There's multiple proximity sources, not just the capital. The capital gives 100 proximity source, which ends up giving a lot of possible max control increase. A bailiff, not so much. Only 20 is not much at all. And you see here, we're getting just 9.33 proximity bonus from Milo to Saint-Afrique, even though it's downstream from a river. So we're basically getting nothing, man. Here, the same as basically nothing. We don't have roads connecting it, but even if we had the roads connecting, it's like almost 0 Kaputski. A bailiff itself costs 200 to build, and it increases noble powers by 100%. You are doing yourself a massive dissatisfaction by building these buildings just because of the noble power alone is going to make your nobles way too strong for basically 5 to 10 extra control, which is really just not worth it in my opinion. If you're really that bothered about it, just make subjects out of the areas you cannot get super high control and integrate and get control later once you have more advances in the later part of the campaign. Now take note, proximity doesn't just propagate over land, it also propagates over sea. So in the case of you going for a naval build with your country, you can go 100% naval value, which is going to give proximity cost through maritime by -1 flat. That is a huge amount, because if we go back to our Byzantine save, check out what's happening in Adrianopolis. Yeah, that's right. The proximity is not coming straight from Constantinople itself. It's coming from the Sea of Marmara. So the way that it's going is basically it goes from Constantinople to Sea of Marmara, then from Sea of Marmara to Sea of Dardanelles, and then from there we can see here it goes Dardanelles, Gallipoli, Gallipoli, Roussillon, Chariopoli, and Chariopoli, Adrianopoli. And that's happening because I reloaded the save from the French save. That's why it's French names, by the way. In essence, guys, proximity cost through port is a lot less depending on your ports, and proximity cost through maritime tiles is almost non-existent. Look at that. Proximity cost from one sea tile to another sea tile is just 3.5. What the F, man? Take note though, to make this happen, you need to have maritime presence, right? So you need to have 100 maritime presence in all your sea tiles. Technically, the cost of going from one sea tile to another is 5 base cost, but if we see the cost between Sea Marmara and Dardanelles, it's 3.5 because of us having 100% naval value, as well as the coastal expansion Age 3 advance also lowers it by 0.5, and then it gets further modified by all the other modifiers, percentage modifiers, which ends up with it being 2.61. There's also open seas sea tiles, which are a little bit different. So if we go over to Stomio, we see that from Sea Marmara to Dardanelles, 2.6, 2.6, 2.6, but then from Sporadi Sea to Gulf of Cassandrea, we also have an open sea proximity cost, which is 4.46. That's because the base value for every country on open seas is -10, but that gets further modified by 0.22 from maritime presence. So if we had 100% maritime presence in there, it would be even less than 4.6. Let's go to our maritime presence. We see our maritime presence is about 76, 77 in this area with 100 in the other areas. So how exactly do we get maritime presence in our sea tiles? The easiest way is to assign ships in the coastlines. You want to go to military objective, patrol the seas, and assign about 4 sea tiles for every 20 ships that you have. That's why you see on my map here, I've got 20 ships every so often, building up that maritime presence. Once your fleet is in a sea tile, it will stay in that sea tile until it reaches 100 maritime presence, and then it moves to the neighboring sea tile until that one reaches 100%, and then so on and so on, patrolling between whatever sea tiles you've assigned it to, making sure all of them keep 100 maritime presence at all times. Also take note, some ships are better than others at propagating maritime presence. So for example, the light ship here propagates maritime presence by 0.15, whilst if we go to our galleys that are propagating it around the island of Cyprus, they only have 0.12 maritime presence. Basically, light ships in general have more maritime presence and are preferred when you need to increase your maritime presence more, whilst the galleys and heavy ships have a little bit less than light ships, with obviously transports having almost nothing, so you don't want to necessarily use transports to propagate maritime presence. There are also certain buildings that you can build to increase your maritime presence in your towns and cities. For example, you can get the coastal fort that increases local maritime presence by 0.15, and once upgraded to the naval battery, it doubles that to 0.30 maritime presence. Do keep an eye out if you're a naval nation for naval bonuses like proximity cost through port -2 flat from the administration of shipyards is huge, and the harbor capacity. Harbor administration government reform also gives proximity cost through port -5%, but there's also certain land-focused nations that have the same effect here. Look at the Russians. This is a land-based nation, right? Look at the propagation we have. This is actually ridiculous, man. From Moscow, we end up having propagation in the 1630s all the way to freaking Siberia, brother. All the way. We still have 10% propagation from here to here. This is crazy. This is the same distance from going from Berlin to freaking Moscow almost. It is insane the amount of stacked modifiers, because this is what's happening happening here. First off, we've got full land or close to full land, and if we hover over the provinces, we see all the different unique Muscovite and Russian abilities stacking the proximity modifiers as well. We don't even have that many roads actually. Let me check the roadmap mode. Look at that. We don't even have that many roads built yet. We don't even have modern roads yet. So with modern roads, we can literally reach northern parts of China and still have proximity from the capital. So going full land is also not bad. Keep that in mind. There's some unique stuff also that help out the Russians, such as the Sudebnik that gives proximity costs through land minus 10%. The Tsardom gives minus 2.5 proximity cost to, and the Voyevode another minus 10% proximity cost, which is why Eastern European nations that have access to these particular government reforms are kind of OP land-wise. Look at our capital here. The core area is about 100 control pretty much everywhere, and they're not even all cities, bro. They're towns and freaking villages. If we upgraded these to cities, all of the core spots, we would have about 100 control in all of this area here. That's just wild. I hope you learned something from today's video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, as well as leave all notifications on. Otherwise, YouTube will not tell you when I release my next video, and get the game with my code if you haven't gotten it yet. Love you, and I'll see you in the next one.